We have asystole. Start CPR. Get me the amp of epinephrine. 1 milligram going in.
My name is Dr. David Chen, and I was a quantum physicist who spent 25 years believing that science had disproven God. I believed the universe was just random chance, that consciousness was simply brain chemistry, that when you die, you return to nothingness. I told my colleagues, my students, even my own family, there is no God. Science has the answers. But on October 3rd, 2020, I died on the operating table during emergency surgery. My heart stopped for 11 minutes. And in those 11 minutes, I discovered something that no scientific equation, no quantum theory, no physics formula could ever explain. I encountered the creator of the universe, and he showed me that everything I thought I knew about reality was incomplete. This is my testimony. Welcome to the Soul Gate, where we share real testimonies from people who have crossed the threshold between life and death and returned with messages that challenge our understanding of science, faith, and the nature of existence. Today's testimony comes from Dr. David Chen, a quantum physicist whose near-death experience revealed something that science alone could never discover. Subscribe and turn on notifications for powerful testimonies every Tuesday and Friday. This is Dr. Chen's story. I grew up in San Francisco in a non-religious household. My parents were immigrants from China. They valued education above everything else. Religion was never discussed in our home. I was always fascinated by science. I wanted to understand how the universe worked. I read books about Einstein, Hawking, Feynman. I devoured everything about physics, cosmology, and mathematics. When I went to MIT to study physics, I was surrounded by brilliant minds who all seemed to share one thing in common. They didn't believe in God. My professors taught me that the universe began with the Big Bang, a random quantum fluctuation, that life emerged through natural selection and chemistry, that consciousness was just neurons firing in the brain. I learned that religion was a primitive attempt to explain things that science could now explain better. By the time I earned my PhD in quantum physics at age 27, I was a committed materialist. I believed that matter and energy were all that existed. There was no soul, no spirit, no God. I became a research physicist at a prestigious laboratory. My work focused on quantum mechanics and the nature of reality at the subatomic level. I loved the elegance of physics, the beautiful equations, the way mathematics described the universe with such precision, and I believed that eventually science would explain everything, including consciousness, including the origin of the universe, including why we're here. When people ask me, but who created the Big Bang? I would say the universe created itself through quantum mechanics. No creator needed. When they asked, but what about the fine-tuning of the universe, the constants that make life possible? I would say we live in a multiverse. Our universe just happens to have the right conditions. It's probability, not design. I had an answer for everything, or so I thought. I debated Christians occasionally. I remember one conversation with a pastor who said, "Dr. Chen, what if you're wrong? What if there really is a God?" I laughed and said, "I follow the evidence, and the evidence points to a godless, purposeless universe. I'm not afraid of being wrong, because I won't be around to know it when I die." That pastor looked at me with sad eyes and said, "I'll pray for you." I thought he was wasting his time, but he wasn't. In September 2020, I started experiencing severe abdominal pain. I ignored it at first, thinking it was just stress. But one night, the pain became unbearable. My wife rushed me to the hospital. The doctors discovered that my appendix had ruptured. I needed emergency surgery immediately. I remember lying on the operating table, looking up at the bright lights, hearing the medical team preparing their instruments. The anesthesiologist said, "Count backwards from 10, Dr. Chen." I got to 7. And then, my heart stopped. The next moment, I was no longer on the operating table. I was standing in a place that defied all physical laws I had ever studied. I wasn't in a room. I wasn't in space. I was in. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like being inside pure existence itself. I looked down and saw my body on the operating table below. I could see the doctors working frantically. I could see the monitors showing a flat line. My first thought was, this is impossible. Consciousness cannot exist without a functioning brain. But there I was, fully conscious, fully aware, thinking more clearly than I had ever thought in my life. I tried to rationalize it. This must be a hallucination. My brain is releasing DMT as it dies. This isn't real. But it felt more real than anything I had ever experienced, more real than the physical world. And then I saw something that shook me to my core. I saw the structure of reality itself, not just atoms and molecules, not just quantum fields and particles. I saw that underneath all of physical reality, there was something else, a foundation, an intelligence, an order that was beyond mathematics. It was like seeing the source code of the universe, and it wasn't random, it wasn't chaotic, it was intentional, it was designed. And I knew instantly that I had been wrong about everything. Then I heard a voice, not with my ears, but in my very being. The voice said, "David." I turned, and I saw light, not electromagnetic radiation. This was different. It was alive. It was conscious. It was personal. And I knew, without any doubt, that I was standing before God. Every fiber of my being wanted to deny it. My scientific training, my years of materialism, everything in me resisted. But I couldn't deny what I was experiencing. This was more certain than any experiment I had ever conducted. God spoke again. "You have spent your entire life trying to explain me away." I couldn't respond. I was overwhelmed. He continued, "You looked at my creation and saw only particles and forces. You looked at life and saw only chemistry. You looked at consciousness and saw only brain activity. But you missed me." I finally found words. I followed the evidence. I used reason. I used science. And God said something that shattered my worldview. Science is the study of how I did things. But you stopped at how and never asked who or why. He showed me something then, a vision of the universe from his perspective. I saw the Big Bang, but I saw that it wasn't random. It was spoken into existence. Let there be light. I saw the fine-tuning of the physical constants, and I understood that it wasn't probability. It was precision, divine engineering. I saw the emergence of life, and I saw that it wasn't just chemistry. There was intention. There was purpose. I saw human consciousness, and I understood that it wasn't just neurons. We were made in his image. We were souls. Everything I had studied, everything I had discovered in physics, all of it was pointing to him. But I had been too proud to see it. Tears started streaming down my face. I was so arrogant. I thought I knew everything. I thought science was enough. God said, "Science is a gift I gave you to understand my creation, but you worshipped the gift instead of the giver." I fell to my knees. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I denied you. I mocked people who believed in you. I was so blind." And then Jesus appeared. I saw him, the Logos, the Word, through whom all things were made. John 1-3 says, "Through him all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made." And I understood. The order in the universe, the mathematical precision, the laws of physics. They weren't just abstract principles. They were expressions of his nature. Jesus looked at me and said, "David, I created the atoms you studied. I designed the quantum mechanics you explored. I wrote the equations you solved. And I did it all for you to discover and marvel at my glory. But you gave the glory to the creation instead of the Creator." I wept. What do I do now? Jesus said, "You go back. And you tell people that science and faith are not enemies. They point to the same truth, that I am real, that I am the author of all physical laws, and that I love them. He touched my forehead, and I felt a warmth spread through my entire being. And then everything went white. I gasped and opened my eyes. I was still on the operating table. The surgical team was celebrating. We got him back. 11 minutes. I can't believe it. Oh. The surgeon said, "Dr. Chen, you're very fortunate. Your heart stopped, but we were able to revive you." But I wasn't thinking about fortune. I was thinking about what I had just seen. I had encountered God, the God I had denied for 25 years, and my entire understanding of reality had been transformed. When I recovered from surgery, I couldn't stop thinking about my experience. I started reading the Bible for the first time in my life. And a quarter. Thank you for watching the Strecked. I read Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and I understood it differently now. This wasn't mythology. This was the statement that the universe had a beginning, a cause, a creator. I read John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And I understood that the Logos, the divine reason, was the foundation of all rational order in the universe. I read Romans 1:20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. I had spent my entire career studying what was made, and I had missed the obvious. 3 months after my near-death experience, I gave my life to Jesus Christ. I was baptized in a small church near my home. My colleagues at the research lab thought I had lost my mind. Some said my near-death experience was just a lack of oxygen to my brain, a hallucination. But I knew better. I had studied consciousness. I had studied brain activity. What I experienced was not a dying brain. It was an encounter with ultimate reality. I didn't leave science, but I changed how I approached it. Now I see my work as studying God's creation. Every equation I solve, every experiment I conduct, it's an act of worship. I'm uncovering the fingerprints of the Creator. I wrote a book called The Physicist Who Met God, How Science Led Me to Faith, and I travel to universities, sharing my testimony with students and professors. I tell them, science and faith are not opposites. They are two ways of seeking truth, and both point to the same conclusion. There is a God, and His name is Jesus Christ. If you're watching this and you're a scientist, an engineer, a student, or anyone who has been told that science disproves God, I want you to know something. I was there. I believed that. I taught that. But I was wrong. The more I studied the universe, the more I should have seen the evidence for design, the fine-tuning, the mathematical precision, the emergence of consciousness. Romans 1:20 says that God's qualities are clearly seen in creation. I was looking at creation every day, but I refused to see the Creator. Don't make the same mistake I did. You can be a scientist and a Christian. In fact, many of the greatest scientists in history were believers. Newton, Kepler, Faraday, Maxwell. They saw their work as thinking God's thoughts after Him. If you've been searching for truth, don't stop at the material world. Go deeper. Ask the ultimate questions. Who made this? Why does it work so precisely? Why am I conscious? And if you seek God sincerely, He will reveal Himself to you, just like He did to me. Dr. David Chen's testimony is a powerful reminder that science and faith are not enemies, but complementary paths to understanding truth. If this testimony has impacted you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it, especially students, scientists, or anyone struggling with doubt. Subscribe to the Soul Gate for more testimonies every Tuesday and Friday. And remember, the heavens declare the glory of God. The evidence is all around you. Seek Him, and you will find Him. I'll see you in the next testimony. God bless you.